Welcome to Voyage the Geek for another week, a show where we do post-reactions to classic films from across time and genre. We have a couple of standing warnings in place. First off, if you haven't seen the film, there will be massive spoilers. In fact, we'll tell you exactly what the ending is and the beginning and the middle as well.
Provided there is an ending?
Yes, and you probably won't have to see the film relative to the amount of information we'll go through. So fair warning. And secondly, truth mileage may vary. Spurious content contained within. Joining me, as always, Dan Miller, Tom McGill.
Howdy.
Hello.
And tonight we're going to take a look at an interesting piece of sci-fi cinema. Loose on the sci-fi, but it does fall under that genre. We'll discuss that shortly. From the early 60s, 1961, which has some loose connections to the world we live in today and some of the concerns that are discussed in popular media, shall we say. It is the 1961 British sci-fi drama, The Day the Earth Caught Fire.
What is your purpose here? How many of you are there?
The 1961 sci-fi drama, The Day the Earth Caught Fire, directed by Val Guest, starring Edward Judd, Janet Munro, and Leon McKern, and a bunch of other people. What was the statement you made before, Tom? The amount of actors in this particular film may be more than our current subscriber list on certain media platforms. But yes, a real look into, set against the backdrop of a sci-fi theme, but a real look into the newspaper press business.
It's interesting, isn't it?
So, Dan, when did you first see this film? Was it for the show, or had you seen this before?
I had never heard of this film before. No, nothing. Nada.
And the title...
Didn't even know that it existed.
When you heard the title, were you a little bit jarred when you actually saw the film relative to the title? Was it the film you were expecting based on the title?
No, it was not the film I was expecting. In fact, yes, it's got the cheesiest B-side, classic sci-fi name, and yeah, you don't kind of get that in the...
I think, Dan, you when I think I suggested the film, and you said, haven't we done the show on this one already? Because we had one where the Van Allen's belts caused fire.
The day something else was happening.
Else caused fire.
Yes.
It was set in a submarine, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a submarine film, but it had a very similar. Like the title of this film made us reminded us of the other film whose title we now can't remember.
I was the same. I thought it was the same film, and then I went back into the old shows and found that the title was slightly different. What was the title of the original one? I can't
remember.
I can't recall.
You have to look that up.
Too many the days.
Our listeners can write in.
It was The Day, wasn't it?
Yeah. Isn't it the day the sun stood still or something like that? The earth stood still? I don't know.
Yes. Let us know in the comments if
Too many days.
What other show we did. So Tom, what about you?
I think I saw like half of it once. The beginning with the newsrooms and everything looked very familiar, and the whole idea of the Earth sweltering seemed like I think I've seen that before, but I think that was a movie that I did not see the ending of.
It is listed as a drama, romance, sci-fi.
Okay,
interesting.
Yeah, there's a bits of everything in there.
I think it sort of almost covers it. And because it's a British film, it has a very different flavour. World on the Far Side of the Sun. What was that show we did?
Yeah, that was the day the Earth had a doppelganger.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But once again, a British film, and when so much media comes out of the American film industry that we digest, the style and the pacing and
When Worlds Collide. Wasn't that it?
No.
Done too many shows.
It'll come to me. But When Worlds Collide was the one we that you thought was the doppelganger film, but turned out to be a different film altogether.
We should have done a
Which
different
we have also
podcast.
done when Worlds Collide. The tagline listed for the film is "The picture that gives you a front seat to the most jolting events of tomorrow, today."
Yes.
And the trailer, when you listen to the trailer, at some point it says, "It goes off like a bomb in your lap."
Yes. And I don't know where that actually comes from, that statement. Yes, interesting pacing, I mean, the acting across the whole film was pretty good, to a fairly good level, with the exception of one person in the cast, which I'll
Yes.
talk to. We'll talk about that later on.
Okay.
Originally, I believe the main guy played by Edward Judd, they wrote the film or had earmarked the great British actor that was
Richard Burton.
That's it.
And the guy looks like Richard Burton, talks like Richard
Yes.
Burton, acts like Richard Burton. And when I was watching it, I was like, oh, cool, Richard Burton.
Yes.
And then I was like, oh, hang on, it's not Richard Burton. Yeah.
Edward
He's
Judd.
also got a bit of Sean Connery in him.
A little bit, yeah.
There's the famed Richard Burton persona of womanising, alcohol drinking, one-liner delivering.
And, he's also jaded with the world. And yeah.
And you can imagine the director took him aside and said, "Just act like Richard Burton."
Yeah, pretend you're somebody more expensive.
So why couldn't they get Richard Burton?
Expensive.
I'm not sure. I didn't read that far down
they-
into the. Do you know?
Couldn't afford him.
Cost. They couldn't afford it.
Yeah, it probably was. It probably was cost. So let's. What we tend to do is use the narrative of the film to drive our conversation, our review of the film. And Dan, you are the master of all things narrative, master of ceremonies, shall we say? Where do we start with this one?
We start with the colour yellow, is what we start with.
Yes, the sepia sort of bleach look that they gave the film.
So this is an
And it's a flash.
1960
It's a flash forward. Like we start in the present time, and then most of the film is then a slightly earlier time.
We need to
So-
say that not every movie in the 60s is black and white. Right?
So, but this movie is
but
black
this
and
one,
white.
this one is, right? So this is a black and white film, but it starts, everything has been graded or colored, although the film stock has been tinted yellowish to reflect the heat of the sun, but also an interesting narrative device to show that then comes a backflash to 9 months earlier, which is now black and white.
Yes.
Which these days,
So
sometimes
the whole
movies.
film isn't yellow, is
No.
the thing. Yeah.
No. It's a stylistic treatment. Before we get started, Dan, did you have a tagline, a log line for this film?
I didn't work on a log line, but it's basically, if some horrible catastrophe hits the Earth, what's going to be the reaction? Is essentially the tagline for the whole film.
Yeah.
But from an interesting standpoint, we don't have a one hero's reaction. It's rather how does the press deliver it? How does the press research?
Yes.
It's all from the standpoint, from the vantage point of the daily.
There's a lot of things
Inquiry
going
or
on with
something.
this film. That's absolutely true.
And for a bit of background, this is happening in 1961, which at the time, nuclear testing and nuclear was front of mind for a lot of societies. The Russians were testing heavily, and so were the Americans. And it is sort of the premise, the base of this narrative, isn't it?
There's sort of this, background of testing nuclear weapons. All right, so the story continues with the yellow tone, so it doesn't have that at all through the movie. Really, it's just the start and the end is where it is. And it's very hot, and the city streets are deserted. There's papers,
And don't we open on a shot of the River Thames all dried out with Tower Bridge in the distance.
Yes, and the main actor walking down the street, clumsily sort of struggling from the heat in that
it's all
sepia
sweaty.
tone. Yes,
Yes. And he goes into a building, and he's a news reporter that we find out, and he's going to type. He's going to type up a news story.
yes.
But the typewriter's all melted, essentially. So he can't do that. And so then he calls up downstairs. There's somebody down there who's...
switchboard.
Through the switchboard, where we meet another one of the characters, Jeannie.
Yes.
And she kind of takes the call, and she's using those plugs to plug into, to route the call to downstairs.
Played by Janet Munro.
And then he begins to narrate the story of what's going on to somebody who's downstairs who's taking the story on a typewriter.
Yes, he's called the switchboard to get somebody to take down his story.
And they even say, is it worth it? How do we know there is going to be a printing tomorrow? And he
Yes.
goes, yeah, take it down anyway because we have the story.
Just in case.
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of where we start, and then it flips over to the regular black and white, and so that's kind of in the past.
And it says 9 months
that's
previous. It goes 9 months previous.
Yeah.
because
It's in the future, and then now we jump back to how we got there, how the world kind of got destroyed.
And we have lively streets and people walking around and the world is normal.
In a busy press room, newspaper
And busy
press room.
So the film's going to introduce the three characters, three key characters, and the first one is Bill McGuire.
Played by Leo McKern.
Okay, and
Famed Leo McKern. He's a great actor.
Absolutely.
Australian actor.
Oh, was he
Oh, was
originally
he?
Australian actor? I didn't know that, but he's
that.
in a lot of British content. Yes.
So quick Leo McKern diversion. Did you ever used to watch Rumphold of the Bailey?
Yes, indeed.
No.
Never used to watch
Having
that.
grown up in Germany, I suppose not.
You missed out on Rumphold of the Bailey.
BBC, therefore ABC in Australia.
Must have been early 80s, I guess.
Yep.
Absolutely, fantastic, dry sort of comedy drama.
Wit.
Yeah, very witty,
Lot of
very
wit.
well written. Anyway, and he plays a lawyer. So Bill McGuire is a news reporter, and he's typing up some articles, and he's in a very busy newsroom.
And he is, in fact, the science correspondent of that newspaper.
Yes, head
That's
nerd.
right.
So he knows
That's
about
right.
the sciencey things.
So we see him finishing off an article on thrombosis.
So he's doing this random article on some random thing he's not particularly super, invested in.
Yep.
Some random thing. But meanwhile, in the background, there's lots of activity going on.
We're thrown into that chaos. I was reminded of some of those scenes from Close Encounters, the Steven Spielberg directing style of having multiple conversations happening at the same time.
Yeah.
At the same volume, right? And you get this sense that there's this chaotic environment going on, and you can believe instantly that that's pretty much what would have been going on, right? They're all just shouting stuff across. Well, who knows something about what? And
I need this. Get me that.
Yeah, and there's and I was blown away by the it's at a couple of points throughout the film. Guys would be talking whatever, and then they just turn over their shoulder and go, "Boy!"
Yes.
And some junior guy would run over and find out,
Sometimes it's an old
"Do you want a
geezer.
Coke or do you want?"
Sometimes an old guy as well. So it's like, boy,
Almost like it was an official title.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that was
The
their
runner.
job.
Yeah.
The runner. But we also learned about the main character right at the start. We learned about him. We learned that Leo, in fact, Bill, is in fact covering for him, writing stories for him. That our main guy.
The main guy's Peter.
Peter.
Yep, Peter.
Yep.
And
Stenning.
he is alcoholic. He used to be a good reporter and is now basically just a runner in the newspaper.
He was a
because-
tentpole reporter, wasn't he? He was like, I think he makes a comment in the movie that there was a time where he was, where major marketing was being used to draw people to his articles and things like that, and now he's an alcoholic ducking out three times a day to the pub.
divorced, seeing his son once or twice every 2 weeks.
So
or
he's very
something.
jaded, and he's just calling it in at work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he even gets a reprimand from his boss.
Yep.
His boss gives him a task. He says, because there's a lot of background stuff going on. This is all very subtle. Now I don't. Spoiler alert. thing is written really well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So everything that we're saying is just carefully sprinkled. They don't take
Yeah.
a wheelbarrow and just dump on you stuff.
But they dump so many. Like, there's a rule in filmmaking, rough rule that says if you have a 90-minute film, you have a roughly a 90-minute script, right? And a page of script is about a minute of film.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was a 120-page script for a 90-minute movie, because there's just so much, so much information gets going through, and as Dan said, it's subtly
And it's delivered. That information is delivered in lots of different ways, and it'll come on the teletype. It'll be a guy asks a question over there who knows something about earthquakes, and it's
not exposition. You've seen those films where there's just the obvious scriptwriter exposition must tell audience piece of information.
Yes.
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of like there's in the background there's floods being talked about.
Yes.
There's riots being talked about.
There's navigation problems with aircraft.
Navigation. Yeah.
Earthquakes.
Earthquakes.
There's all sorts of weird, and that there's at the core of the whole thing, there is a nuclear test done by Russia. Now,
first of
at
all, the
this
Americans.
stage, I don't think we know about the Americans till later.
Americans,
Americans
because the
first
Russians
up.
don't
That's in
divulge stuff.
Antarctica.
Yeah, that's the first. Americans divulge their information.
Ah, that's right. We know about the American test that happened on a Tuesday
and they
morning
go,
or
it's been the
something.
biggest ever,
Biggest
bigger than anyone
H
before.
bomb.
Yeah.
And in Antarctica. And later on, obviously, in the film, the cat's out of the bag. Later on in the film, we find out that the Russians have tested a bomb, bigger, at exactly the same time. And that causes the whole thing to happen. But we get drip-fed all of these news items and events and strange stuff going on in the world in all these different ways. And what's happening in the forefront is this character reveal of who these main characters are and what they're all about, and you get it. So all this other stuff is coming in subliminally while you're focusing on, okay, who are these people?
Yeah.
And it's done really well.
Oh, it's done really well.
But you
sort
cannot
of-
be distracted. You have to sit there and listen.
Yeah, you got all these sort of jigsaw puzzles in front of you, right? In your mind, you're like, oh, that's a piece of information about that character. This is another piece. This is another piece. So
Lots of humour and wit. The main character, Peter Stenning, the guy that enjoys a drink, is hiding from life behind humour and alcohol.
You got to like what style of humour though, right? Because it's not any style of humour. It's very dry,
sarcastic,
highly sarcastic, dripping with sarcasm, and a lot of double meanings all the way through. Everything that they say has two meanings to it. You know, one is the front meaning, but they're also saying something else in the background.
And it makes perfect sense given that they're writers as well.
Oh,
right?
that
They're
does make-
educated writers, and so they're wordsmiths, right? And they get away with it, right? If you placed these conversations in a fire station or something like that, it might not make as much sense.
Yeah, true.
And I'm not sort of separating into intellect into two different vocations, but they're writers, they're wordsmiths, and their craft is to do it all in 500 words or 300 words or whatever to fit in a column.
So there's been a lot of talk about, or some of the talk has been about sunspots. Somebody thinks that something's caused something, navigation problem, sunspots. So sunspots. So our hero, Peter, gets the job of writing some article about sunspots. So they say, go and write an article about sunspots.
Yep.
So because he's jaded and whatever, he makes a bit of a joke.
It's
about
beneath his
about
talent.
it's a bit lame that he's got to write about sunspots. And that's when his boss reprimands him and he says, what does he say? He says...
You might want to put in more effort or something.
Yeah, you might want to put in more effort. This company isn't designed to have passengers.
Yes, that's
or
right.
something or other, and that kind of like cuts him down.
And he was just about to launch into a tirade and then caught himself and realised. So he's self-aware enough to know that, I've got a problem.
Yeah.
But he's not interested in doing much about it.
Yeah.
In the start of the film,
He's definitely calling it, and I think they even used the term phoning it in.
but it possibly is where the term comes from.
I looked it up.
Phoning in a story across, not being present and just phoning it in.
Now, it works very well for that, but the origins of it, because yes, I did look it up. It's in actors on stage.
Okay.
And sometimes the joke the actors would say is that their part is so small on stage that they can literally phone it in. They just call up and deliver their lines, and then they'd be done.
Nice.
All right, so he's got to write this lame article. So that means that now this is in the days before the internet. So you got to be think of yourself in a world where, you don't have access to the internet. So where are you going to get information from? Yeah. So he has to call up the Met, and the Met is the
Probably Bureau of Meteorology.
Meteorological something or other. So he calls up and he gets on the line. He gets one of those what do they call the operators?
Yes.
That do all the plugging in.
Yes.
That plugs the call in. And because he's like
cranky and sarcastic.
Sarcastic. He's like totally rude to the operator.
Because he's asking to talk to the guy in
He
charge
wants to-
of the
yes.
Met, who is like a lord,
Yes,
an English
Sir
lord
Peter
or something.
somebody or other, or whatever his name
And when
is.
she says, no, I'll put you through to the press pool. I don't want to talk to the press pool. Who the hell are you? And he gives her a bunch of lip.
Yeah.
And then finally signs off by saying, well, I don't want to talk to the press pool. Go and dive into the press, go and...
Go dive in and drown us.
Yeah,
No,
dive
no.
in and drown.
What he says, put me through to the right place, and she says, I don't have to do what you say. I don't even work here. I work at the pool.
Yeah, that's right.
And she's talking about the typing pool.
Yeah.
And he says, well, why don't you go and drown? And it's like, fuck. That's pretty
And hangs
rude.
up.
That
Yeah.
hangs up. All right, but he didn't get what he needed, so he's going to have to go down to the Met office and go and So he goes down there, and he just barges in.
Yes.
He just waltzes in, finds Sir Peter Appleby or whatever his name from Yes Prime Minister, and he just waltzes in and just hits him with questions.
Yep.
But the tone of his question is kind of interesting because he's still just calling it in.
Yes.
He says, "Come on, tell me about sunspots."
Yeah, give me something. It doesn't have to be real.
Yeah, just tell me some crap I can write about sunspots, and I'll write my story.
He'd fit right into the Murdoch network of news writers, especially in that British tabloid type sense. He wasn't real interested in the facts.
Yes, but he gets us a kind of a slight hint because apart from them being pissed off that he comes in and they're like, "What are you doing, old boy? Bugger off! Can't you see that we're really busy?" And he's like, "Busy? What are you busy about?" So anyway, it looks like they're a bit flustered down at the old Met office. So his journalistic instincts kick in and he starts digging for a little bit more, but essentially gets kicked out.
Yeah.
But not before meeting the woman.
Well,
the woman who,
on his way out,
Yep.
Yes.
he decides he'll go into some other office. He goes into the press office. First he goes to Hassel, Sir Peter Appleby or whatever, and then he goes into the press office.
He wants a press release for the day, the daily press release.
Yes, he's going to basically demand the press release. And Jeannie's in there, which is our other lead character. So
who was at the switchboard, who he insulted earlier, and
Yes.
now she's in the press office where she...
But they haven't met each other
Fixes the
in
printer.
person before.
No.
No.
So they don't know each other. So she's trying to fix a thing. She's trying to fix a printing thing.
Yes.
It's not working.
And proceeds to bend over a desk, and then he oogles her.
Yeah, that's right.
So he's also a womanizer. So he's an
Yes.
alcoholic, smart-ass womanizer.
So yes, sarcastic, jaded, cranky.
Yep.
They just paint him as just the worst person.
Yep.
Yeah. He wants to get some stuff from her.
He reveals his name, and then she realises that it's the guy
Yes.
that was on the switchboard, and proceeds to slap him in the face.
Yes. So she says, "This is what I got for you."
Yeah, it's a bit of a
Pow.
very gentle sort of washcloth
Yes.
sort of kind of
I
slap.
thought
It had a bit of snap to it.
the
I think the audio was added later on.
the audio effect was a bit more energetic than what the actor put into it.
Yes.
But
Yes. And he sort of almost likes it.
he was impressed.
Yeah, she walks out, and then he's
She
got
slaps
a wry
him
grin.
and then storms out.
He likes
Storms
a
out.
chutzpah.
Yeah. So like the cut of your jibs up. All right, so that I think is the end of Act 1. So we've introduced the three characters. We've got Bill, we've got Peter, and we've got
Jeannie?
Jeannie. So the next one is in Act 2. We're back in the newsroom, and this is where we get the news flash from Russia. And so some people are noodling around in the newsroom. Bill is just about to leave, and Yeah, a news flash comes in that the Russians have set off a gigantic nuclear bomb doing a test themselves.
Last Tuesday, so it's a bit of old news now.
But last Tuesday.
Yes.
And then they sit down and go, okay, what Tuesday in Russia? What's the time difference? And some clever guy sits down and with a sheet of paper and a pencil and
Does
sort of
math.
figures out that these two, the Americans and the Russians, pretty much did their tests almost at the same time.
Yes. So two gigantic bombs go off at the same time. So this is news. This is newsworthy. So they have to hustle and they stop the presses.
Yes.
And we actually see footage of the presses. And I think the people working in those
Yeah.
presses were actual people working in
Well,
those
they did
presses.
definitely, I think, film at some of the actual press offices.
We see that.
So it's like a big factory, and there's big machines with newspapers.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting the way they introduced that whole mechanism because they wanted to change the headline. They wanted to change page one.
Yes.
And so the editor, the big kahuna,
Calls the
calls
guy,
down,
calls another guy.
who gets off the phone and then calls his underlings, who then calls their underlings, and you, as you get to see these conversations happening about holding page one and pull page one and all this sort of stuff, we start to see different areas of management within that printing process. And I thought that was done really well. Incredibly loud environment. You start to get a sense of how noisy and loud it would be in those constant, almost 24-hour a day printing. Because you'd have your morning news and your afternoon news in those days as well.
And then special editions in between.
And
Yeah.
they had a night crew that they were talking about. So there were people coming in at night writing stuff. I don't know if they were printing stuff.
I'd say those press rooms on the bigger papers were 24-hour.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition
ventures.
between the different
Yes.
journals. And so if you had a story, you need to get it out right there and then, immediately.
Yeah. So that's a bit. One of the cool things about the movie, when we were saying that it's got lots of things in it, there's sort of drama and there's the sci-fi element, but there's also this really kind of quite detailed breakdown of how news was done in 1960.
Yeah.
Newspapers, how it all worked.
Yeah.
The whole system, including the deliveries of the newspapers,
It's all worked in there.
writing of the articles.
It's the foundation, the palette that it's set against, the canvas that it's set against is the news business, really. And they tell this story of what's going on in the world. The sci-fi aspect of the movie is bedded on this mechanism of news, producing the news, which you can explore so much, right? Because that's the information data processing sector of society at the time. That's where we were getting all of our information from. And to be sort of shown all of the mechanisms and how it all works, I thought was very interesting. And it allowed for all these little mechanisms to release. You started to get a sense of record temperatures. We started to get wind of all of these weather-related things that are going on. Rain, I think they even talk of flooding in Western Australia and the
very international.
Cairo was
there's lots of
There
places.
was lots of rainfall in the middle of the dry season in Africa.
yeah.
All right, so there's a little. The next stage is a little bit of character development where they talk about Peter talks about his son. His son, he's divorced, and his wife's got custody, and he has to go and get a very short amount of time to visit his son.
He's worried that he's going to grow up a Jesse.
Yeah, a toffee-nosed.
Yeah.
And he wants him. Yeah. So he's concerned about how his son's being brought up. So they have a bit of a chat about that.
That's in the pub that they always frequent.
So there's a
They
pub
have
around the corner.
A pub
that
around the
they-
corner that they go in after
Across the
hours
road, yep.
to have a steak. And when they order a steak, they get a steak. It's a plate.
Yes, they don't
it's
get
a
it.
plate with a steak on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think she does offer vegetables, and they say nah.
A salad or something.
Yeah,
He said, no.
bread. Give me bread.
Yeah. And all of the dialogue is just so good. It's just so witty because he's just been writing an article about thrombosis or something or other. So he's making jokes, very dry jokes about too much fat on the steak and, all sorts of things like that. So next story element is Peter's out covering a protest. And there's a big anti-nuclear protest. So
Yes.
there's loads of people, and they've all got signs. Stop the nukes, and they've all got the peace sign.
And then there's a bunch of people with other signs saying, "Bring the nukes."
Yes, that's right.
need
We
the
want the bomb.
Yes.
And then they start fighting each other.
Yes. So there's this kind of brawl that happens, and Anyway, whilst all of this is happening in the city, in the middle of the city streets,
Trafalgar Square, isn't it?
Trafalgar Square, something like that.
There's lots of famous landmarks in this film, like London landmarks.
Somebody turns around and says, "What in the world could that be?" They look up in the sky.
Great Scott!
Great Scott.
And it is.
The sun.
Dun, dun.
It's an eclipse that
a
no
solar
one
eclipse.
expected.
It's the
Yeah, unscheduled.
surprise
Yes.
surprise eclipse.
Yes, it was. The eclipse wasn't supposed to happen for 9 days or something. I think someone says, but yet, lo and behold, it's happening
Yes.
over their shoulders.
So Peter, just like this is in the days before mobile phones, Peter just like grabs some random person and kind of essentially steals their camera and takes photos of the
Steals their
eclipse.
sunglasses as well.
Yeah.
He holds,
Oh, yes.
holds the sunglasses in front of the
That's
lens
right.
to take a photo of the
And then
eclipse.
steals the person himself and says,
Yeah.
"Come with me."
Yeah. We'll develop your pictures because the guy goes, "Oh, my pictures and my holiday photos. Oh, we'll develop them for free. We'll give you 10 extra rolls. Just come with me to Fleet Street."
Yep.
All right, so he takes them back to takes the photo essentially back to the news station, and they all have a big powwow, and they all talk about.
We get to see the sort of big kahuna's
Because they're
office
piecing it all
debrief.
together.
Yeah,
They're
this-
slowly
yeah.
piecing the jigsaw puzzle together. They're collecting all of the information.
Yeah.
And we get to see what the editor does, which is kind of interesting.
Yes.
'Cause
Now,
he's like calling all the shots.
now the editor, for my mind, can't be an actor.
There was something a little bit.
I don't know whether he was the uncle of the director or something, or he was a real editor.
I
Maybe-
wrote down Arthur Christensen is his name.
Yes.
Gets prize for most wooden performance. He is just
Terrible.
Absolutely. He
absolutely terrible.
He just reads the letters of the script
Yep.
without any intonation whatsoever. He says, "Hurry up, make it quickly. I need it now. Go ahead. No, I need it now. I want it now. Get
Yes.
it done."
Yeah. It's to me. It reminded me that there's a Sean McAuliffe that does a show, Australian comedian, does a show on the ABC, and he used to do a show, sketch comedy type show, and one of the segments that he used to do was this guy who was a terrible actor, and he would deliver his lines by, "Where are you, my love? Look off screen to the left camera." And it felt like that. It felt like
It
there's
did.
no screen craft. There's no acting craft
It's
at all with this
amazing
guy.
how much people learn in acting school, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because somebody who has no clue
Yeah.
stands out drastically. They had such trouble with him because he couldn't remember his lines. They basically had to just constantly tell him the next line, and he would then just say it, and then
He was terrible.
he was terrible.
He really stood out as well because everybody else
got it. Everybody else
top
nailed it.
shelf
Yes.
actor.
Yes.
And I love when
Yeah.
he's on the phone, and when an actor is on the phone, they actually in their mind have to have both sides of the conversation in their mind.
Yeah.
Right? You say your pauses need to be long
Yes.
enough to let the other person give the reply, and he wasn't doing that. He was just giving a second, and then he would say, "Yes, we'll do it." "Well, that's up to you." "Okay, well then do that then." Bye.
I think there's one scene in the film where he wants to get everyone in the office, and he's got one of these boxes with
Yeah.
a bunch of switches, and he says, "Everybody get in here," and then switches them all on. Like no one would have heard what you just said. And then he realizes, "Oh shit, I only hit half the switches." So he delivered half a line, then went back and tried to switch the rest of them on, and that was the best take they took.
Yes. So he was so standout that I had to look him up.
Yeah.
And
What's
so
the deal?
he is the actual editor of the Daily Express.
Okay,
There's your problem.
there you go.
He is not an actor, but he
Yes.
was the guy who runs the newspaper that they feature here at the Daily Express.
Okay.
And
So
he
he-
was the scientific,
The SME.
consultant. He was the consultant on the
Yes.
film, essentially, to tell them
Subject
how
matter expert,
newspapers-
and probably even gave them access to their
Yeah,
newsroom,
exactly.
and
He
a
did.
lot of those people in the background were
did.
probably newsroom people.
And in fact, the director Val Guest used the same They used the same person again in another movie later on for some reason. But I mean, his contribution probably is all the things that we said were really well done. How the newspaper works, that we could see all that.
Yes.
That is that guy's contribution to the film.
Yeah.
As detrimental to his acting.
Yes, he should have stayed behind the camera. But it was a great scene that when you start to get all the people in that room and they're all sweating and it's 1,000,000 degrees outside and you've got those incredibly dangerous fans everywhere without guards on the front of them. So you've got these whipping blades all over the place.
And there's lovely continuity in the film in terms how the sets change over time,
Yep.
how the matte paintings change, obviously, because a lot of it is filmed in London, and then later on the film, a lot of stuff is destroyed, or the Thames is evaporated, and they're acting in front of matte paintings. But you also see it in the costume where their shirt buttons later on the film, they're always a button more open, and there's just a little bit more sweat, and there's just extra fan in the room that wasn't there before, or a window that wasn't boarded up earlier is now boarded up.
Yeah. Did you see the name they gave the editor?
No.
Jeff Jefferson.
It sounds like a comic book.
It does.
name,
It
doesn't
sounds like something out of Spider-Man.
I noticed another thing on one of the walls. Is again attention to detail. One of the walls in the newsroom, they had sort of a
Oh yeah,
impact.
The daily stuff that you hear,
Yeah.
Get it in on time.
Yeah.
Get the pictures, lots
Yeah.
of pictures.
Yeah, and was impact. Have the impact in the article, impact in the pictures, impact in the whatever.
Yeah.
So that was there in the background. But then later on, the editor guy starts to mention the word impact. You know, I want to make sure it has a lot of impact. You know, so they'd thought about all of this. That they'd built together this world.
Yep.
You know, that all of this stuff existed in.
Yep. So they're starting to throw around theories of what might be going on and starting to pull the pieces together, the journos, especially Bill Maguire being the sciencey guy. He's starting to formulate a bit of an idea, and I think in that meeting he starts to put forward the premise of a shift, because the editor goes over to the world map and draws a line of all these catastrophic things going across the planet.
There's some sort of pattern to it, is what
Yeah.
they're starting
It's
to
all-
see.
yeah.
They're starting to see. And another thing that the film does is it drip feeds you this stuff. It really winds up the tension, you know. So first of all, you know, there's a rumor, then we find out that something has happened, then it starts to get hot, then, you know, there's another thing gets added on, another thing. This gets worse and worse and worse. All right, so the next one is, the next story block is the heat wave. So this is where the heat wave hits, and you get a bit of a montage of the newspaper with 95 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever it is.
And they use that throughout the film quite a bit for exposition. The front pages will show up
spinning newspaper
type
Yeah,
thing, and we get
yeah.
to see what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
It's just another mechanism to sort
A
of...
lot of story is told just by looking at headlines.
yeah.
It'll just make you read what happens next.
Yeah, and it
says
ties back
cyclone.
to the news business, which is the bedding of the environment that it's all taking place in the film.
So previously, in a small character dev bit in the pub, we'd heard him, Peter, talk about his son and, you know, taking him on rides at the park. So we're now down at the park, and he's going to take his son on a ride. So it's lots of, this is why it's so well written. There's lots of sort of foreshadowing where they just give you little drip feeds, and then they develop it and they bring it. So he takes his son for a ride down at the fairground, right? So he's on the bumper cars, and they go on the ghost train, which is the thing that the kid wants to do. And it seems like they're having a good time.
Yeah.
This annoys the nanny,
Yes, the uppity nanny.
so we never see his ex-wife. There's just this nanny.
Not until the end of the film.
But anyway, he seems to be having a good time. But anyway, that's all finished, and the nanny takes the son away, and then he's leaving.
He bumps into Jeannie, who's sunbaking in the park.
Sunbaking.
Yes, it's probably apt.
It's probably
description.
accurate, yes.
Yes.
Description. So it's super hot, and
And he gets his sleeves on.
Yes. So he's trying it on. What's a good word for what he's doing? He's hitting on her.
He's hitting on her. It's been 4 weeks since the slap incident.
Yes. So he's got to overcome the fact that, you know, she thinks he's a bit of a jerk. But on the flip side, from Jeannie, she kind of likes him, right?
Yes.
She kind of likes him.
Yep.
But she can also see that he's a bit of a jerk.
Yep.
There's lots of witty, sarcastic, double entendre, double meaning, you know, fast-paced, you know, quips and everything between them. I think there's a important point where, in an offhand way, Jeannie just says, she tells him that she accidentally got some juicy information because she's on the calls. You know, she's hearing all of the calls.
Yes.
But then she catches herself before she
That's
says
right.
what it was, and then says, I shouldn't tell you that because, you know, it's supposed to be a secret.
Yes.
And, you know, the code
Lose
of
my job
conduct.
about it.
I
Yeah.
lose my job about it. So that is another foreshadowing, right?
Yes.
They plant these little seeds, and they're going to develop that later on.
He
down the
starts
thing.
to consider her a possible contact at the Met.
That's right. So that kind of ends with them looking out over the Thames.
Yes.
And the strange
Well,
fog.
the crowd starts rushing over towards the river. Mm-hmm. And what's happening on the river there?
There's a kind of a mist or a fog that comes barreling down the river. I thought it was like a tidal wave or something.
Yeah, it looked like that initially. The special effects were
Interesting.
Yeah, they were
I
what
think
they
they
were.
used a range of different special effects. There was
The map
quite,
paintings were great.
they had models. They were using a lot of models.
Some of the miniature stuff was terrible. You got to slow the film down, otherwise it looks like you're
There
in a
was a
bathtub.
couple where it could have done with a bit of slowing down.
There's a few boats bobbing around at one point there, and you look at it and go, "Well, that's in a bathtub."
Yes, and I thought the double-decker bus fella got full over was a bit. Could have been a bit of a crash.
Yes, I
instead
think
of
they.
clonk.
I think they threw a few cars around though. When
They threw some
later
actual
on. There's some
cars.
wind, some serious wind, and they were pegging cars at the side of buildings and things like that. They looked real.
So there's this fog rolling down the thing, and then London just kind of gets covered in fog,
Yes, they call it a heat
mist,
a heat haze or something,
heat
don't they?
mist. Yeah. So
Special type of fog.
a special type of fog. Yeah, I've not. Yeah, but anyway, apparently it's a thing.
But generally, it's normally only a couple of feet off the
Yeah.
ground. This is 4 stories high,
Yeah.
and it's thick as pea soup. You can't see, 3 meters in front of you.
So there's kind of car
Like
accidents.
they claw their
and
way.
stuff.
They claw their way out of the park where she was sunbaking, and they find a little girl,
The lost
Trixie.
girl, yes.
Trixie's calling for her mummy.
Anyway, they head back to Jeannie's place.
But they warm up at this point. You know, he still doesn't know her last name. He calls her Miss
No, she
Miss
said her name was was.
Yeah.
She gave a fake name.
Later, and during the rescue with little girl, she reveals her real name to him, and she smiles and
Starts to ask questions about, like, make comment that he's good with kids. And,
Yeah, he is.
and-
He's actually good with kids.
And he reveals that he's got a son, and then at first she thinks, oh, well, you're just a sleazy married guy, and then finds out that he's not, that he's divorced and stuff. So there's a lot of connection going on in this moment in the film. They get on a bus.
Yep. And they eventually just make their way down to Jeannie's place.
Yeah, well, he needs to call in. He can't. He wants to use the phone at the subway, but he's not allowed in because they've closed the subway because the fog is leaking down into the subway. So she offers.
She's got a phone.
She's got a phone.
So
They end up at her place.
Yeah. So they go up to her place. Again, lots of sarcastic.
got the phone next to the bed. Is that to call for
yes.
help?
Yeah. Yeah, just brilliant writing, and both of them are going off on all of this. Like I don't know, she hassles him for drinking
They're
too
not
much.
going there direct. They separate first because they go out of the park in the fog with the girl and they save the girl, but then they separate because when he then visits her later on, she's just coming out of the bathtub.
No.
He goes there first and uses the phone, and that way Bill back at the office gets her number because he wants to know where he can contact him because he reveals that he's cut off, can't get back to the office. And then at some point he decides to leave, goes for a 2-hour walk and ends up back in front of the same building. That's how thick the fog is. He can't work out where the hell he is.
So he went there twice.
And he finds himself back in front. So he calls upstairs and says, well, you won't believe it, I'm downstairs again.
Yeah.
And then by this time it's quite late. And so she says, come upstairs and you can sleep. You can stay here.
And I thought that was
Well,
forward of a 1961 movie that we see a naked woman essentially.
Yeah.
From behind putting on her.
There's breast revealing. There's it's if it was an American film that you wouldn't have seen that.
There was because we do a lot of reviews of 1950s movies. This is early, I think, for 1961 to see more sexual content, also in the way they speak, and he sits on her bed and finds her bra and panties and plays with them.
Yep.
And some
The
brief
censors,
nudity.
the American censors wouldn't have been having it, but the British censors, that's a European market, and it's
They did
different.
give it
It's just different.
a-
Like if
an
you look at
X-rating.
the beatnik hippie movies of the 60s
This
out of
film-
Britain, they're totally different to
The rating that it got, though, was X, which means you can't watch it unless you're 17.
But it wasn't
Yeah,
for that.
16
It wasn't
or
for the
I don't know what it
nudity.
was for.
It
I
was
do
for
not
the
know.
theme. It was for the themes.
For the theme, right.
Yeah, the disaster, people dying, and
But we see
cars
lots of
landing on
bikini
people.
girls running around, legs, naked women's legs in the foreground while things happen in the background. There's a woman just in her bikini, just showing her legs off.
Yep.
That was, advanced. You wouldn't see that in an American film from the same time period.
So there's this meeting in the room. I've got a couple of moments out of it that I want to see if I can read out here. So there's a bit of a delivery of some of the lines, so I'm not going to do this justice in any way, shape or form, but I just want to give a bit of a hint. This is when he's calling up from downstairs. So she's in the bath, which was set up earlier. She's washing her hair. So she's in the bath, and Pete calls up from downstairs, and he essentially says, "I'm downstairs." And then he also says, "Did you hear the news about the anti-pro police rally?" But the important point is because she's answered the phone and she's essentially dripping wet, essentially wrapped in a towel, and she's just heard that he's now downstairs. All right. And so then she pauses for a moment, and then she says, yes, I'm just trying to work out all the permutations.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that line.
Because she's like trying to process, okay, because that means he's coming up, right? And she's essentially naked. He's coming up. And so then he says, there's no permutations. There's only two, You can either send me back outside, or in 2 syllables,
Make yourself an honourable woman.
He says, in 2 syllables, become a law-abiding citizen.
Yes. Exactly.
And then Janine's response is, she has a bit of a think, and then she says, "Can you be one too?" Right? Can you be a law-abiding citizen as well? Meaning that, if he comes up, he's going to try something. So anyway, it's just all this very, very subtle, fast-paced stuff. The other one, do you remember what he said the instant he opened the door when he saw her for the first time when he arrives upstairs? He says, so he opens the door, he knocks, she comes to the door, she's dripping wet, essentially wrapped in almost nothing, and she's got short hair, and he opens the door and he
says you look like a boy.
Yeah, he says, you look cute, kind of boyish.
Kind of boyish. And she says, oh, remember that you're normal, right?
yeah, which is remember you're straight. All right, so they then go on this witty banter about sleeping in the bathtub and all of that, and then eventually they kind of get together and they end up spending the night together. And then
he says, as the camera goes out, like they're still talking, and the camera goes out of the window and sees the outside of the room, and I think his last words were, "Move over.
yeah,
I'm coming into the bed now."
Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
So, and then the giant cyclone hits, right?
More special effects of cars falling over and people crashing.
Glass breaking, and then...
So we had the heat, we had the sweltering heat, we had the fog, we had the cyclone, after which comes the cleanup.
Yep.
And I read somewhere that during the film, they're sort of recreating the stages that London faced in the Blitzkrieg.
Okay.
The destruction, the cleanup, the water rationing, the sending the children away from the city over into the countryside. That's all reflected in this film. But London had just been through 20 years earlier.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I think it's back at the news desk is what happens next. They're cleaning up after the cyclone. It's a busy day at the news thing. Turns out there's like cyclones everywhere.
Yep.
So they're getting news that the thing's all coming in. And then they call one of those editorial meetings, and they have a chat with, I think, Bill, who puts they ask him, what do you think's going on? Put all this together for us. What do you think's happening? And he says, look, it could be this, it could be that. You know what I think has happened? What would explain it all is if the Earth's axis has been tilted
Yep.
from the nuclear bombs, because there were multiple nuclear bombs just by accident happened to go off on the same day.
The word is nutation.
Nutation.
Nutation,
Okay.
which is axes of rotation. So,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
It's off axes is his theory.
It's
There's a
gone.
new axis. Yeah.
Yes, it's gone off by.
The equator is in a new place.
Okay. So while they're all thinking about that possibility, there's a phone call comes in, and it's Janine, and she wants to talk to Pete.
Yes.
And she says she's got some really important information that she wants to talk to.
And she just wants to talk. She's not giving him a scoop. She just wants to talk to somebody about something she heard.
Yes, because she works down she works on the calls, so she can overhear things.
Yep.
So they go down to a fairground or a park or somewhere or other, and they have a little deep and meaningful. And what does she tell him?
That
Well, the camera goes away. We don't hear it at the start. At the time, they're in a Ferris wheel.
Yep.
And as she starts telling him what's going on, she first takes his promise, oath, cross his heart, and hope to die, that he will not publish it, that he will be silent about this.
Yep.
And then she begins to say what it is, and we don't get told because the camera then moves away.
That's right. But Pete does resist. He does say, "Hey, come on, I'm a newsman. You can't say." But anyway, he promises not to tell, and so we don't quite find out what's going on. So I think there's a kind of a.
Well, he has a story now, so he marches into the news office and starts saying, "I've got the thing here. We need to print this."
Yes. So apart from saying, "I won't tell anyone," he immediately
yes, this is too big, and he tells his editor, and the editor calls the Met and says, "Well, we're printing this. The Earth has rotated 11 degrees.
yes.
Never mind where we know this from. We're printing it, and you
Yep.
better give us your quote, or you don't."
Yep.
And they go to press.
And so Janine gets a visit from the Secret Service.
Yeah, he goes to see her, and when she opens the door, she's packing. There's a cop car downstairs waiting that he notices as he walks in, and there's a guy, a security type guy, agent type guy, sitting in the apartment that he doesn't notice when he walks in, who announces that she is under protective arrest.
Something like that.
Protective custody.
Yeah, protective custody. For revealing the story, and we do see in one of the headline flashes a front page picture of her, and then underneath it, sort of alluding to releasing the information that should have been released or something like that.
I wonder if they did the story on her in their newspaper. Anyway, things are going from bad to worse. It's getting super hot. I think all the water's running out.
Yes, he notices on the way back that they were setting up water stations in the park, and he asked one of the truck drivers what was going on, and the truck driver revealed that they were setting those up all over the place, all over the countryside. Before the truck driver was ushered off, and some cop-like guy was screamed security. So we get this sense in the film that the people that know what's going on are not sharing anything, really.
This is the government,
Yes,
right?
it is. And throughout the film, we get this sense that it's the press seeking the truth, and the government that are sort of keeping it all to themselves.
And we as the audience never get a vision of what's going on in the government. We only see it from the hero's perspective that they never get to see either. They just get little drips of little pieces of information.
Yeah, and the odd broadcast. So we do get the head of the Met makes a broadcast.
And they keep saying, "Don't worry, nothing to worry about."
And the Prime Minister also makes a broadcast as well, who says the same thing and suggests that, those of you that think that the 2 atomic bomb tests caused all this to happen, there are scientists that believe that is not true, but I would be amiss to not say that there are also scientists that believe it's exactly the truth.
Yes. And then he has the sort of keep calm and carry on,
Yes.
which I think actually comes from the Blitz. Doesn't it?
Yep.
It comes from the actual. So anyway, water rationing. I think they say that there's not going to be private water anymore.
Yeah, they're turning that off, and then now everybody gets to shower in the park for a certain length of time, and everybody gets rationed a bucket full of water.
Yep.
And so everybody's, as you were saying, outside, it's getting hotter and everybody's, looking more ragged and sweaty and whatever. So they're ratcheting up the pressure in the film, and then there's another meeting that gets called because another news flash has come out.
Yes.
And the Russians have been doing some maths.
Yes.
And what have they come up with?
Well, the editor, Jefferson, gets on the phone to his Russian counterpart or contact, someone in the field, who announces that the Russians have found that not only is the Earth 11 degrees off axis, the orbit of the sun is 11 degrees. So they use 11 twice, right? Is 11 degrees.
Orbit of the Earth is
the orbit of the Earth
spiraling
around
towards the sun.
Yeah, and we're moving closer to the sun. Mm-hmm. And I love Bill's.
Bill immediately goes, "Well, that gives us 4 months then."
Yeah, and they say, "What do you mean?" Well, in 4 months' time, this planet is going to have an odor of
the universe is going to smell
barbecued
crispy,
human, crispy human.
barbecued mankind. Yes.
And they say, "Why?" I said, "Well, you just do the math. Like, have a look at the rise of temperatures over this amount of time. In 4 months, it'll be cooked human time."
So it's kind of out of the frying pan into the fire type thing.
Yep.
So the world goes a little bit ballistic, and there's kind of, all sorts of problems going on everywhere. And we get a cool little scene of a policeman, a very young policeman,
Yes.
who's directing some people and doing some stuff, and the heroes are moving around. But that policeman would go on
Oh yeah.
to become a knight.
Haha, Sir
I
Policeman.
only told you to blow the freaking doors off.
Yes.
His voice, if you close your eyes, you pick it up immediately.
I couldn't. I looked
No?
at it and I thought, the mouth. Maybe the mouth is recognizable.
I
but
didn't
otherwise-
recognise the guy.
I could
Like,
see-
he didn't look like his older self. And we're of course talking about Michael Caine. But the tone and the delivery of the words and the
Accent.
the dialogue, the accent is so classically him. And he's only 19,
Yeah.
20 in the film.
Yeah.
He's like a checkpoint police officer in the film, and he only gets about 3 lines, something like that. But instantly I picked it up and I thought, no, that sounds a lot like Michael Caine. And sure enough.
Well
yep.
done.
Yes, it's Michael Caine. But it's okay because the government, all of the governments and all of the best scientists in the world have come up with a solution to the problem of the Earth, tilting axis and plummeting into the sun.
The Americans would call it a Hail Mary plan.
A Hail Mary plan.
Where you got nothing left, no other options. I thought there was an interesting comment by the main actor. Remind me of his name again.
What, Leo?
Peter Stenning.
Oh, steady. Okay.
His character. He refers to. There's this moment where he says, "This can't be it. Like, all of our scientists, there's got to be a solution." And he refers to, we've landed on the moon. This is 1961.
Oh, does he say that?
Yeah. He says, we've done this, we've done that, and we've landed on the moon. Surely our scientists can come up with a solution for this.
They talk about satellites.
Satellites and landing on the moon.
Hey, I wonder, which I never did, is in the close-up, as we see the newspapers, do we see a year printed on those? Do we know what year this film is supposed
No,
to
I'm
be
not
taking
too
place?
sure.
That's a good point.
It might be 1961, like it might be actually in that time. A lot of the visual motifs in the protests to the peace signs and stuff like that were of that period as well. I found it interesting in some of the trivia notes. I found that somewhere in that crowd, there's a sign, and someone had printed a peace sign, but it wasn't. It was the Mercedes logo.
I looked for that. I couldn't see it. On second viewing of the film, I checked out every.
I just took
couldn't see
the trivia notes word for it. I didn't go looking for it, but it might be in real time. It might be set now in their time in 1961. But I found it very interesting because as soon as he said that, we recently did a show of Destination Moon, which has a lot of these predictions well before the moon, 20 years before the moon landing. And it sort of sparked my interest because he does make mention of satellites and landing on the moon. I don't know whether he said man landing on the moon, but he did say, or he might have said rockets to the moon. But he definitely refers to rockets to the moon or landing on the moon, and this is in 1961.
I don't know, maybe they were developing because before they landed on the moon, they had to do lots of tests and stuff.
Because it was
So maybe
Kennedy
they were-
that set up the space program, right? And Kennedy didn't come to power until 62 or 63.
I don't know, maybe there was, I don't know, some
Yeah.
proposal that was happening beforehand that they're picking up on.
I found it very interesting. Yeah. But that was his desperation, we've got to be able to do something. And then, sure enough, yes, we hear this plan that the scientists have come up with. What's the plan, Dan?
The plan is to explode more bombs.
Yes.
Bombs
Yes.
broke it, therefore bombs will fix it.
It's exactly that, isn't it? So we're going to try to explode bombs to realign their thing, the 11 degrees, but also push us back out by 11 degrees from the sun as well.
So with that in place, I think there's lots of rioting and stuff, and essentially
People being people.
Janine and
There's
Pete
water riots, aren't there?
kind of get
People
together.
playing Dixie music down the streets as if it was a New
Yeah.
Orleans funeral.
Well, Michael Caine is guarding
Society.
the checkpoint to stop people from going into this area where this rioting is going on. But Stenning gets to drive through there because his girlfriend, Jeannie, is living.
Jeannie, did I say Jeannie before? Yeah, Jeannie.
She's living in that exact area.
So essentially,
it's
has to
probably important to
rescue her.
note that she gets a job. Part of the thing that Peter does out of guilt and desperation of causing her so many problems by releasing the story, she loses her job at the Met, and they give her a job at the newspaper, and in that moment they make up. Right, she's in the library. She gets a job in the library at the newspaper, and he goes in to get some facts from the library and says, "I need
You.
I need you."
Yeah.
She said, "I need you too."
Yes. So there. All right, so they're back together again, and now it's the countdown. So there's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. They're counting down for the bombs to go off,
Yes.
and of course the bombs are going off on some other part of the world. So
Yes.
the bombs go off, and
A little bit of dust comes from the ceiling.
a little bit of dust comes from
That's
the ceiling.
nice. That's nicely done.
was
also
subtle.
the way they're in the pub together having drinks. The
Are we
Um,
yellow as well? They went back to yellow.
We're
yes,
starting to
because
get
we're now
sepia.
in the yet.
Yeah.
We're now in the
Yeah.
yet time again.
Yep.
And we hear the countdown, and during the countdown we hear each number, sometimes in a different language. We see the Red Square in Russia. We
yes.
see the Brandenburger Tor in Berlin. We see the Rome. We see different
Yep.
major cities.
We see that
and-
motif in so many films. Armageddon, like when there's something that has to happen to save the world, and you get these people crowded around
world bands
televisions and
together.
things like that, and they're all sort of counting down in their own languages, or the news broadcasts are revealing the same thing, but all in these different languages. This is one of the earliest films I've seen that done.
They go into the pub, and there's only the bar proprietors, the May.
The owner and the manageress.
Yeah. The May is actually the main actor, Pete,
That's his wife,
wife.
in real life, yeah.
his wife, and it's just those 5 people. So it's the 3 main characters plus the bar people, and
Yep.
we've seen them before in several stages because that's the bar they always go to, and we hear the countdown and it goes 0, and then of course nothing happens. We don't see explosions, nothing. And then just a few seconds later, we just see that bit of dust falling from the ceiling, which is beautiful.
Subtle.
Yeah,
Yep.
The movie is.
I
very-
didn't want to hear an explosion.
Yeah.
That's how it's bad enough that an explosion in Siberia causes dust to fall in
Yep.
in London 10 seconds later, but it's nicely done. And then we see him walking down the empty street
Well,
again.
Bill goes to leave to go back to the office to write the story, and as the veteran sort of
The city's deserted, by the way.
yeah, and he's the veteran reporter or writer for the paper, and he just takes that role, sort of, I'll go back to the office and write the story. And then Peter, who has sort of turned his attitude towards life around a little bit, he's not so much on the piss as he used to be, he says, "No, I'll do it." and they all stay at the pub, and he walks off down to it. And then we hook up back to the very start of the film, where he's alone walking back to the office in the sepia world, and nobody's on the streets and things like that.
And so he's kind of narrating.
Yes.
What I've said here is he's narrating his last article.
Yes.
The last one he'll ever write. So there's a nice arc there that he'd kind of given up.
Did you pick up the only continuity issue for the film?
No, what was that?
His girlfriend was back at the pub with Bill, yet she was on the switchboard.
Oh, the switchboard later when he tells the story.
Okay.
Oh, she
When
must have
when he
walked
needed
after him.
somebody.
Yeah.
Why didn't she just go back with him?
She had a drink to finish.
True, they could have improved that. Yeah.
But yes, it sort of brings it full circle.
Yes.
And it is nicely done, because the bombs going off wasn't the answer. We now had to see whether that worked, and there is a time that is allocated to that. So we get the countdown to the bombs, and then we've got a period of time where we have to learn, did it work? And that's what he's narrating in that air, that it's all come to this.
Yeah.
What will it mean?
Yes.
What will be the result, the outcome?
And so then they flash past two newspapers that are on two printing
I thought that
machines.
was nicely done. Yeah, you've got two versions of the front page.
Yeah, they're waiting to print, and they don't know which
to
story
see which
print.
one is going to
Yeah.
get printed. Yeah,
we made it,
Earth
or we're
doomed, or
Or Earth saved.
salvation.
Yeah,
That's it. Roll
and
credits.
that's where the film ends.
Well, yes, we
ending.
see a close up of the top of what is that building?
St. Paul's Cathedral.
Yeah, and we see a close up of the very top of it with the cross and some pigeons flying off, and then we start to hear bells.
But do we?
Yes, but do we? Exactly. Yes, or should we?
Should we?
Because that was a bit of an add-on that I think.
Years later.
Is it really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
The bells are not in the film. Not
in the original,
director's-
there's no
not.
bells.
No,
It's
there are
just
no bells.
it just goes to
It's completely ambiguous what the ending is.
I think some people wussed out and they wanted to
It's
give
the
a-
Americans. It was
Yes,
when it was released in America. The
They need-
Americans
they need the-
they needed a
Americans.
happy ending.
Yellow
and
ribbon.
They wanted the
They added the
ending.
church bells.
Yep.
But I think the director kind of
think
said,
it's better without.
Val said that, or whoever said that they were kind of okay with it because the bells, you ring the bells when there's danger, you ring the bells when everything's okay. It's just a sort of a...
You can
So
still
anyway-
take away, even with the bells, you can still take away different meanings, couldn't you? Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Different meanings, yeah.
I took away, the bells meant for me that it worked.
That's what the Americans wanted. That's why they added the bells.
Yeah.
But the director
Without the bells,
No,
I
yeah.
might have been a little bit more frustrated, and it could be because I've developed a bias to the wrapped up ending by watching so much American-based TV. But it is there's a lot of Australian films that are like this in the European mindset that just leave it open. Let people make their own.
People consider it longer. They think about the film. They
Yep.
meet in pubs and talk about it.
I've always thought that a tragic movie stays with you longer, right? Because a happy movie with a happy ending, dun, 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 boom,
Yeah.
and then it's like, okay, that's done. I'm going to go and do something else now. But if you get a tragic movie where it doesn't end well, I feel like I'm driving home afterwards and I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that. I would have done this, I would have, anyway, you think about it longer. So anyway, I liked the ambiguous ending.
Yes, same.
I thought it all tied in. So wrapping up some thoughts, it was a very Hitchcocky. It seemed like there was a little sprinkle of had the Hitchcocky
The
flavour.
film craft felt a little bit like that as well.
Yeah.
The cinematography and the angles and the closeness of characters. There was a definite cinematography direction that was maintained throughout the whole thing because it's very conversational. Yes, you do get a backdrop of cars flipping and fogs and rain and typhoons and all this sort of stuff, but really the film is all about words and conversations and reactions and things like that. And the way that was shot, you'll notice in a lot of these shots that are appearing on the TV here and from the film, there's a lot of bounce light coming up underneath the characters. You can see it. You can see it in the newsroom. There's definitely a lot of uplight happening on the characters, and that's by design, right? That's not an accident. You know, everything you see on screen is deliberate.
Cinematography was good. This is an anamorphic film. It was done in
Yes.
widescreen.
Yep.
And nice composition of shots.
Yeah. I thought, and the buzz of the environments and the stage direction was quite good.
Reading reviews, random reviews of people, people essentially fall into two camps. There is people who would review it and say it was written really well, and they give it 4 stars or something, 4 out of 5. And then there's people who don't like it and give it 2 stars, and they're like, "There's too much talking in this movie."
It is slowly paced.
Yes.
It is a film. There's not much action, right?
Yeah.
It is. I wouldn't say it's not boring.
No.
Because if you're listening and it's fast paced, there's lots of happening. There's, as you said, multiple conversations. There's subtlety. There's humor in there. I love the part where the boy comes in and says, they don't want to talk to him because he's just a helper, you know, and he says, the fog has blown the debris, the hurricane. The hurricane has blown the fog away. And they go, why don't you go blow yourself? It's comments that I would not have expected in a 1961 film. And if you are just listening to the story and taking it in, it is not boring. But it is not an action film.
No, it's and I think
It's
you're
people
gonna
around
have
on
two
telephones
crowds.
and shuffling papers.
You're going to have the crowd that enjoys being stimulated. This was a weird scene.
That's a weird thing. I wonder if these were. So we're looking at people here that just popped into the shot at some point into the basement
into the foyer of her
Jeannie's
building.
apartment, and they have a little skit.
Yeah.
A family, and I wonder if this was a guest appearance of some well-known British actors.
Yeah.
It's like the
felt
camera
like it.
was sort of following the main story, but then on a side quest, it just sort of slid over to see what was going on over here, and some other people are having
Some people are
having
lost.
some dramas.
Right? You got a mother and father and a daughter walk into the foyer there, and they're lost in the fog. They don't know where to go.
Yeah, but they get a lot of lines in the script.
And
they get a quarter page or
she
something.
wants to go to the toilet, and this weird scenario where everything has to be translated by the wife from the father to the daughter, and then back the other way.
Yeah, they've got some weird family dynamic going on.
It's almost like
in the
they're
middle of the
it's
film,
like they're
which
part of
doesn't-
another
it's
show
like
or
putting
something.
Woody Woodpecker in the middle of
Yeah.
a film and having a 5-minute cartoon.
Yeah.
It's part
So-
of the film, but it doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
There are a few things that could have been tightened up, like that, perhaps the acting. Quick diversion to science.
Yes.
Okay, because it's kind of science fiction. Now, you can sort of decide for yourself whether a nuclear bomb could push the planet off its
can't really.
game.
No.
I don't think you
Or
get
not?
to decide that. No,
No,
the
it's a
Earth
decision.
is. To me, that would be like an atom on a basketball, thinking that it could
2 atoms.
roll the basketball.
Russian atom and a US atom.
You know, it's
Plus
so.
the nutation, like the axis is the center of which a gyroscope spins, and gyroscopes are famously very, very stable. So the last thing you can do is change the nutation of the Earth.
Yeah.
That being said, I remembered when watching this a random article. So you know how we said, your truth mileage may vary.
Well, here it comes.
Going up to 11 here. Random article by random people on the random internet somewhere who are
Someone out
apparently-
there brings science to it.
Okay, so I'm citing my source as random bullshit. The Three Gorges Dam in China.
Yes.
If you imagine a
That has
An
to do with
ice-
the spin of the Earth, though not with
Yes.
the axis.
Okay,
This-
so-
the rotation, the length of the day can be changed.
So, if you've got an ice skater and she's spinning around at the end of the thing and her arms are out, she spins slowly, she pulls her arms in, and she spins up, right? If you do that in reverse, you slow down.
Right.
So if you build the Three Gorges Dam and you put a gigantic load of concrete and you lift it up, and then a whole bunch of water, huge amount of water starts to get lifted higher and higher and higher, it actually slows the rotation of the Earth down by 0.000 of a second or
Oh,
something.
way
you
more
know.
zeros than that.
No, well,
It
according
is
to
measurable.
the scienticians,
It is measurable.
Is it?
It's
And
measurable.
same with glaciers, as glaciers melt, the land that was pressed down springs back.
I have heard
like a
that,
sponge.
yes.
And so again, it's like taking out the arms and slows down the rotation of the
And
planet.
it causes displacement. It's more than just the water that melts that causes the oceans to come up. It's the fact that ice is not weighing down the Earth.
Yeah, the Earth comes up.
And the Earth comes up. I heard, I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson that said that if you were a giant out in space and you came across the Earth and your relative size was the same, that the Earth was the same as a cue ball, like a pool ball, snooker ball, all of the mountains on the planet would literally still be as smooth as a pool cue ball, right? It is that smooth relative to the sheer size that it is, even though we've got pretty tall mountains. From the right scale, when you look at the planet, it is literally that smooth.
But we have some pretty accurate atomic clocks these days, and we can measure the
But the measurements, to the Three Gorges Dam thing, you're talking about such minuscule shifts in time that you almost got to devise devices to go that small.
But the larger picture, I guess, for
big
the
planet.
theme of the film is, humans can probably wreck the joint if we A, try, or B, don't try to not wreck the joint.
Yes.
So,
and it's sort of, that's where what I alluded to in the intro of the show, that there is some loose connection to where we
mounting
are
ice
at the
caps,
moment.
it's
where
torrential rains and
Climate
cyclones.
change.
records are being
Climate
set
change.
all over the planet at the moment.
Yeah, and even COVID stuff and all of the
Wildfires burning
wild,
all
yeah.
over the place, and it's and at the same time with the nuclear angle, you've got warmongering countries that are doing all sorts of crazy shit, and you can it's not a too long a bow to draw to sort of connect the two films. And that made it a little bit more interesting to sort of watch the narrative as well, and the fact that it was set in a time which was pretty scary, right? When nuclear arms race was pretty damn scary. Once we saw what it could do to a city at the time, not in the 60s, it was what's going to happen here? We're going to blow ourselves apart, and the fact that it manifested itself in weather change and all this sort of stuff, I thought it was an interesting angle. So, gentlemen, that brings us to a rating system of buy, borrow, burn. Where does this film sit with you, Dan?
I don't know if I can handle the rating system exactly this time.
For once, you're not. Oh my
Fair
god!
warning.
The day that Dan didn't
Caught fire.
didn't stick to the 3-point system.
So it's not burn.
No.
Nah.
And it's kind of not borrow either. Feels a little bit weird to buy. I don't know if you even could buy this film. But it's definitely on, must watch. So
Yes.
it's on. It's up in the buy zone.
It's
You
got
should watch it.
All the qualities of a buy movie. The problem is you probably wouldn't see yourself watching it again.
Yes, it's
You might
something
watch
that
it once every 20 years or something.
it's something that you should watch, and you should probably be in the right mood. You know.
So I think that qualifies as a borrow.
Okay.
Strong borrow.
Strong borrow.
But I'm positive.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about you, Tom?
What Dan said. 100%. I'm exactly.
You're in the same zone. I think I'm the same. Very watchable. So if you haven't seen it, you've obviously just you've heard about it to such a degree you don't need to see it. But I think we don't do it justice. It's very brilliantly written, well acted, with the exception of the one exception.
The one exception.
But even that makes for some interesting viewing. Especially now that we've sort of prefaced it. But definitely catch the film. I'm going to ask you guys 10 questions to see how closely you were paying attention in this film. And by the sound of our conversation, you were paying some pretty good attention, because you might know some of the...
Spoiled
You
the
might have
questions.
already mentioned some of the answers to these questions. So we're going to use our buzzer system. And if you buzz in, there's only two players on the panel. If you buzz in and you get it wrong, the other player gets to take the points.
It's not
All right.
lighting up. There we go.
Test your buzzer there, Tommy. Test your buzzer. Nice. All right. Question number 1. at the start of the film, why couldn't Stenning write his article? Tommy?
Because the ink or something on this typewriter melted. So the round plastic rubber thing that holds the paper was sort of melted away.
I think that's exactly what it was. I've got melted typewriter, but yes, I think it's the
It's
roller.
not the metal.
It's the rubber roller
Yes.
that,
Oh,
that
it was
rolls
the
the
rubber.
paper.
Yeah,
I was trying to imagine that it was the ribbon for some reason.
Yeah, no,
Is that-
I
he
initially
had this-
thought that as
he had
well,
this
but
goo.
he touched it and it was sort of coming up
Yeah.
the roller.
He
and
had
it
this
was the
stringy
plastic
goo, so I think
rubber.
it was
It's
the rubber.
Yeah.
You know, just a quick. They all, when they wanted to write something on a notepad, they would all stand their typewriter up on its back.
Yes.
Everybody was doing that. That must have been a thing.
Yes.
It's like folding down your thing and then standing it up like this.
So that they could use the desk underneath.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was
Quite
interesting.
possible.
To any younger listeners or viewers, a typewriter is like a computer without electricity or a screen.
It has no USB port.
And you
can't-
needed fingers like
Oh, muscles.
oh yeah,
Yes.
you needed very strong fingers because it was all mechanical.
Yes.
All right. Question number 2. According to the film, what causes navigation problems? Tom.
Sunspots.
I
Correct.
want to finally know one.
Correct. You got to get your hand on the buzzer
Have
because
it
you
on
went
the
looking.
fingers on
I
the
saw
buzzer.
you go
True,
looking
it's
for the
like-
buzzer then.
It's like quick drawers in the cowboy times. You got to be like, yeah, okay.
Got to be on it.
Okay.
All right. Question number 3. Where was Russia's largest bomb detonated? Dan.
Siberia.
Correct.
I know stuff.
Question number 4. What was the surprise event at the protest?
Ah,
Dan.
It was surprise eclipse.
Correct.
unscheduled eclipse. Yes.
Question number 5. According to the headlines, what was the temperature at Brighton Beach? Dan.
95 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is absolutely correct.
Fuck, I'm on fire.
Like a
Like
hawk.
the Earth
Question
on fire, like the planet.
question number 6. What was the little girl's name?
Trixie.
Tom. Trixie.
Damn it.
Which stuck out. Trixie is commonly a prostitute's name in a lot of films for obvious reasons. She does
badly,
tricks.
badly dubbed.
Okay.
You hear her call, "Mommy, mommy, oh my God, wait!" And then you see her for the first time. It's just a girl standing there looking around. The act, like, I think there's even audio of her going, "Meh," but it was overdubbed
Yes.
later on, and the girl is not.
I think there was
actually
quite a
acting.
few. There's 3 or 4
Yeah,
times when
you
they
see the
overdubbed.
or you see the actor's mouths moving with no
Mm.
dialogue.
And I think Jeffrey Jefferson was.
Oh, if only.
Well, yeah.
So we've had 6 questions. The score is 3-all. It's a tight quiz this time. What did the giant sign located in the newsroom say?
Ah,
Tom.
wrong. It said impact.
Correct. Apostrophe.
Yes, big one.
Question number 8. What crime did Stenning commit?
Crime.
You didn't go to jail. She went.
Stenning committed a crime during this film.
Well, he didn't murder somebody. He caused somebody to fall down an elevator shaft.
Yeah, he killed someone. So,
Okay.
Tom, yeah, and you even buzzed in. So I've
I
got to give
buzzed in
it.
quickly.
I've got to give it to
I could have
Tommy.
buzzed in.
I've got to give it to Tommy.
But he didn't kill. The
No,
guy.
it would have been manslaughter.
The guy fell, and it was
No,
similar
no,
to
the
Time
guy
Cop.
fell because he punched him out the door.
I
That's
know,
manslaughter,
but the
Tommy.
acting,
Tommy, that is
the
manslaughter.
acting was like the guy. You remember at the end of Time Cop when the guy
Yeah.
spirals into himself?
Yeah.
This was very similar.
Oh,
The way
definitely.
he fell towards, and then he holds onto the side, and he looks
Yeah.
at it and goes, "Oh, need to
Yeah.
let go." Oh.
Yeah. So basically, he kills someone.
He does.
You can quabble about the formal charge that if the world survives, he might have to face, but he definitely kills someone in the film. Question number 9. Which famous actor played the checkpoint? Dan.
Sir Michael Caine.
Correct.
I was
blow the
prepared for
bloody
that
doors
question,
off.
and I even learned his real name in order to get the answer, and I wasn't fast enough on the buzzer.
Too slow.
Okay.
His birth name is Maurice.
What was
I
his
have
last
heard
name?
that.
It's
Morris Joseph Micklewhite.
Yes,
Right.
that's right. Yes,
Right.
yes.
And I think in some movie, I think it's a Miscongeniality or something, where he actually pulls up a fake name for himself and calls himself Maurice.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure. I'll have to watch that film again, but I think that's happening in that movie.
All right, gentlemen. Question number 10. This is our final question. Tom currently on 5, Dan on 4. So Dan, you can sweep the draw, or Tom can take it outright on this question.
Plug this very quick.
What was unique about the film's ending? Tom,
was
and it has to be what I've got written here,
It's ambiguous. Open-ended. We don't know, we don't have the resolution.
not what I have here.
Oh.
Yeah, Dan, you get the steal if you've got it correct.
It was yellow. Sepia.
Incorrect.
Oh.
So, Tom, you win. The answer is it just faded to black. There were no end credits to this film.
But films of that period didn't have many end credits either. They might
at
say
least
the
had,
end.
They at least had the end.
Oh, they didn't even do that.
But they deliberately did not put the
Ah.
end because it might infer.
Oh, that's
Good
in
point.
the end. The end
So
of the
they
earth.
literally faded to black.
Right.
And when you went to the cinema, it faded to black.
Good point.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough.
So, Tom, you are the winner. Dan, close second.
I think it's a moral victory.
It was a good quiz. You boys were definitely paying attention.
On fire.
You were paying attention to this film, and I think it's worth. It's the sort of film that it's hard not to pay attention because there's a lot going on.
You have to pay attention.
And you get into it quite quickly. So we've done our rating system. We do recommend that you check out the film. It's got a really nice reprint. I think it was updated recently, and
It was restored.
It was restored recently, and it is actually quite a beautiful film. We would have seen it in maybe a 1080p, but it might even be available as a 4K reprint because it is actually really nicely color graded, even though it's black and white. It's a nice print of a black and white film. If you are this way inclined and like to listen to some geeks waffle spurious facts about film, then definitely check us out on our socials or on YouTube. Leave us a like, subscribe, dingle the bells. That's it for me. Until next time, bye for now.
Bye.
Wiedersehen.
What is your chemistry? How many of you are there?